Now, Lake Avenue up to challenge Victim of Love. Pacific Gale is there, and Estilo Talentoso out in the middle of the track. And Bayerness has gotten into the mix down at the rail. They're moving for the 16th pole. Lake Avenue, Estilo Talentoso. Bayerness is third. They're coming on for the finish. Estilo Talentoso has won the Bed of Roses.
Welcome back to Racing Rundown. In this preview, we're going to be discussing another Breeders' Cup Challenge race. We're going to be discussing the Grade 2 Princess Rooney Stakes at Gulfstream Park. This race is a very wide open iteration of the Princess Rooney, as I already mentioned. It's a part of the Breeders' Cup Challenge Series for the Filly and Mare Sprint. There are 8 horses in here, and you win this race, you have your automatic berth into the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. And as we usually do here on Racing Rundown, we're going to go through every single horse in here, 8 horses, and I'll give my opinions on them, positive, negative, and how I think that they will do in this race. And we'll start off with the number 1 horse, Estilo Talentoso, the morning line favorite coming out of coming out of a win in the Grade 3 Bed of Roses Stakes. Before that win in the Bed of Roses, this filly has been the model of consistency in her career. 14 starts, she's been in the money in all of them. Consistency is a hard thing to find in this race. Outside of Estilo Talentoso, consistency is one of the things that I really value in a horse when I'm looking to them, and for that reason, you have to consider Estilo Talentoso. And you look at the horses that she's been losing to, even going back to the early part of her early part of her 3-year-old campaign, because she didn't start at 2. Couple of the early starts in her career. Third career start ever was a maiden race on the 1st of March at Gulfstream. And in that race, she finished second behind a filly named Four Graces, who went on to be a graded stakes winner in the Dogwood at Churchill Downs. Following race was a second place finish behind Vigilante's Way, who went on to become a graded stakes winner on the turf. But still a graded stakes winner. Race was run a few weeks ago. The race at Vigilante's Way was a winner in it. And even up to this point this year, she has run some very big races. Second in a Grade 3 at Laurel. She was second also in the Madison, so Grade 1 placed behind Kamari, who is, in my opinion, the second best older female sprinting in this country. And then third in the Derby City Distaff behind Gamine and Sconson, who herself went on to be a stakes winner this year and was a graded stakes winner as a 3-year-old filly. And it is worth mentioning, in that Madison Stakes, where she was second, beaten less than a length by Kamari. She beat pretty much every single other B-tier filly or mare that's sprinting in this country that's not here already. So horses like Bell's the One, Sconson, Fair Maiden, Monday Call, horses like that, she beat them all that day. So that was a very good run for her. Even her losses are nice losses. And as I mentioned, never been out of the money. I really like consistency in this race. It's very hard to find consistency. So Estilo Talentoso, horse you absolutely have to give some consideration to. The number 2 horse we're going to move on to is Aerosol. This filly is definitely not consistent. She's a Florida bred. She's had some good runs against Florida breds, but the runs against Open Company really have not been there. She is coming out of an allowance win, which was a good allowance win, but there are other horses in here that I like at a price that are a little bit more consistent than Aerosol is, and are a little bit more proven in Open Company. So I'm going to go against Aerosol in this race just because I don't like the lack of consistency that she is showing. The number 3 horse we're going to move on to is This Is My Time. This is a filly who I would definitely give a strong consideration to in this race if she wasn't coming off the layoff that she's going to be coming off of in this race. She hasn't run since she ran second to Pacific Gale in the Inside Information Stakes way back in January. So I don't like to pick horses that are coming off of that long of layoffs, and she is coming off of that, and I'm not going to change that here in a race that I personally think is very wide open, and all the shorter priced horses in here I think are beatable, even down to Estilo Talentoso. So if This My Time had a run underneath her, I would definitely give her some consideration, but I'm going to pass on her because she is coming off of the layoff that she's coming off of. And now we're going to move on to the number 4 horse in this race. The third choice on the morning line probably is going to drop down to be the second choice in this race, and that's Pacific Gale. She is a horse who I think is going to get a lot more play than I personally would not play Pacific Gale here, and I think Pacific Gale I think people think Pacific Gale is a lot better than she actually is. And what am I talking about? Well, Pacific Gale obviously has won 2 races at Gulfstream Park this year back in the winter. So that's definitely a positive for her. But Outside of those 2 wins, you have to go back to October of 2018 to find her last win. So the consistency is definitely not there with Pacific Gale. And it's not a case like Estilo Talentoso, where every single race she's running bang up seconds and thirds in. There are a lot of bad finishes for Pacific Gale in races. There are some good finishes too. A fair amount of seconds and third place finishes, but also a fair amount of bad races for Pacific Gale. It took her a very long time to figure it out. I don't really have an explanation as to why it took her as long as it did for her to finally get another win in her career, but I can understand why she won the 2 graded stakes that she won, taking a look at the level of competition that she was beating. And I personally don't like to use this horse beat nothing argument, but I only go to it when it makes sense, and it feels like with Pacific Gale that she was so inconsistent for such a long time that that's something where I look at those 2 wins, and I think more so than anything else, she just caught easy fields in graded stakes and was able to get a couple of wins underneath her. Again, she wasn't a bad horse throughout the losing streak, but she was a very inconsistent horse, and definitely when there were better horses on the day, she would lose to them. You saw that at Belmont Park. In both the Vagrancy and the Better Roses, the horses were much better than her. And I would caution against, because I know that the counter to that would be, well, it's at Gulfstream Park, and she loves Gulfstream. She doesn't necessarily like Gulfstream more so than any other racetrack that she's run at. And I think that's something that's very deceiving with the recency bias of these wins, because yes, these 2 wins have come at Gulfstream. However, she doesn't have any special affinity for Gulfstream. If she had 5 career wins and all those career wins had come at Gulfstream, then that would be something that I would be more willing to look into. But 2 of her runs at Belmont, or 2 of her wins have come at Belmont Park. So I don't think she likes Gulfstream particularly any more than any other racetrack that she's run at, specifically Belmont Park. I think that it boils down to she caught a pair of light fields and was able to get a couple of graded stakes wins underneath her. She went back up to New York. She lost against better horses, and I think that there are horses that are better than her in here. So I think she's going to get a lot of play. She's not going to get my money because she's just too inconsistent. Even though she does have the 2 stakes wins this year, she's just too inconsistent in the overall part of her career. If she wins, oh well, but I'm going to hedge against her winning because I don't like the overall lack of consistency in her career. And the number 5 horse is Cece, another horse who has been very inconsistent as of late. And the connections have tried for a very long time to try to figure out what Cece wants to do. Does she want to go long? Does she want to go short? She had 2 breakout Grade 1 wins toward the beginning of last year. In March and April, she won the Beholder Mile and then the Apple Blossom. She has yet to win a stake race after that, and she did not win another race, period. Any level race for the rest of 2020. And it's not like she was terrible. A couple 3rd place finishes in Southern California graded stakes, and then 4th in the Derby City Distaff and 5th in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. She's just a horse that I think it's taken them a very long time to try to figure out what worked for her. I don't really know what was able to click for her and get her the wins in the Beholder Mile and the Apple Blossom, because the Apple Blossom field that she beat was not a bad field either. That was a really good field. You look at what the horses from that race came back to do. Cece, that may have been an aberration, but Cece beat good horses that day. They tried her at the Derby City Distaff at 7 furlongs. I don't really think that's the solution. She did come back and win a 7 furlong allowance race though, so it's not like 7 furlongs is something that she doesn't want to do at all, but I don't really know that 7 furlongs sprinting her is the solution for her. I think that she may just be past her best races, and I'm not going to trust a filly who has not won a graded stake since April of 2020, when there are horses that I think are on the very same level as her in terms of talent in this race. So I'm going to pass on Cece in here, and I'm similarly going to pass on the number 6 horse, Laura's Light, but I'm passing on her for a different reason. Laura's Light was a very good horse in the early part of her 3-year-old campaign up until the Del Mar Oaks on the grass, and that's why I'm going to be passing her, because I feel like she's a grass horse. She ran some very good races as a 3-year-old on the turf, Honeymoon, San Clemente, Sweet Life Stakes, all those graded stakes on the turf for 3-year-old fillies in California, but she ran in a stake, or she was supposed to run in a stake race at Lone Star on Memorial Day. That was a turf stake. That race came off the turf. She won that. That's probably why she's here, but I'm not convinced that one off the turf stake win on the dirt is going to put Laura's Light in a position where she can beat horses that have won graded stakes sprinting throughout their careers. So I'm going to pass on Laura's Light similarly in this race. And now we're going to move on to the number 7 horse in this race, Hiawala, a filly who's coming out of a win in a handicap race at Gulfstream Park on the 6th of June. And this is a filly that I actually was able to find some consistency with her outside of Estilo Talentoso. But and the reason I'm going to make a case for her is, number one, I really like the pedigree on this filly. She's by Candy Ride out of Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint winner Merrifield. But that's not why I'm going to pick her. So she won a handicap in her last start. She was off the board in the Grade 3 Royal Delta Stakes in February, but that was going longer than she wants to go. She's out of a Breeders' Cup winner. She probably doesn't want to go a mile and a 16th. She probably wants to stick to these kind of sprint distances that she's going to be going with in this race. You look at the race before that, though. That was a win going a 1-turn mile at Gulfstream in an allowance race. She won that race by 3 3/4 lengths. And then, you go back to her final start of 2020. That was a 3rd place finish in another allowance race at Gulfstream, and that was going 6 furlongs. So I think she's probably a bit of a middle distance horse. I think she wants to go 7. 6 is probably too short, but as we saw in the Royal Delta, a mile and a 16th is a little bit too long for her. So I like her more so than I like the other long shots in this race because I get consistency over the surface. I've got 2 wins and a in-the-money finish in sprint races at Gulfstream Park. Sprint races are 1-turn races if you want to get more technical. So I may be reaching a little bit with Hiawala, but I like her at big odds in this race. And the final horse that we're going to talk about is the number 8 Sound Machine, a filly who I considered for picking her on top in here, but she's just too inconsistent for me to take on top. On her best day, she can win a stake race like the Musical Romance, but she's just too inconsistent for me to take in here. Again, consistency's been a big thing for me in this. She's not been bad for the most part. She did finish off the board, though, in the inside information, but outside of that, not really too bad, but the wins are not necessarily coming for her, and for that reason, I'm going to be going against her in here, even though I did like the win in the Musical Romance, but just the inability to win races is pushing me away from her. So we'll get to my picks in this race. I was originally going to take Estilo Talentoso, but since I think all the favorites are beatable in here, I thought might as well bomb it up in here. So I'm going to go with Hiawala for the win in here. She could potentially be the highest priced horse on the board. I liked that last win going 7 furlongs. She's 2 for 3 sprinting at Gulfstream or going 1 turn. If you want to get technical, the one loss was a 3rd place finish in a 6 furlong race. I think she wants a little bit longer than 6 furlongs, so she's my top pick. Estilo Talentoso, you can't leave her out. She's never finished out of the money, so got to leave her in there. And then I'm going to take Sound Machine, a filly who, it does usually run a good effort. I'm going to cross out the inside information and really look to some of her other efforts where she hasn't been off the board since the Prioress in September of last year. So I'm going to take Hiawala for the win. I'm going to put Estilo Talentoso 2nd and Sound Machine for 3rd. I'm going to sandwich the favorite in between 2 of the horses that I think are going to be the higher prices on the board. And once again, I think that this is a race you can bomb it up in. I think you can make a case for pretty much everybody, except for Laura's Light, just because Laura's Light is a turf horse. So that's my top. That's my top 3 in here. But once again, as I've said many times already, there are many different ways you can go. I think the favorites are very beatable. I would advise to play against most of the favorites in here, but if you need a favorite, Estilo Talentoso is the one you can depend on the most. So that's it for this video. We will see you in our upcoming previews. We're going to have a preview of the Grade 2 John Nehrude at Belmont Park, as well as a preview of the Dwyer, a race for 3-year-olds. Those are the remaining previews that we have on the schedule for the week. Make sure to check out our Suburban Stakes preview, as well as those aforementioned previews that have yet to be released that I will put out in the coming days. So have a good one. If you do play this race, good luck, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
She's backpedaled the second last here. Meanwhile, Hiawala's firing big. She's 3/16 from home and 5 on top. From the outside, Crumbun tries to take up the slack second toward the rail. Mary and Mike, then it's Saratoga Vision. But Hiawala for Juan Carlos Avila and Hector Barrios have run them off their feet. They're authoritative winners of